I have a lot to say about Encanto. I know I haven't done a video essay in like 2 years, but I just have so much on my mind about this movie, I cannot keep it in anymore. I know my channel is all over the place and sort of a mess, but hey, I'm all over the place and definitely a mess, so there you go. I'm going to at least try to make this video a bit more put together. I'm going to be splitting it into sections, timestamps in the description. Also, I'm going to be talking about the movie assuming you've already seen it. I'm about to spoil literally everything, so if you haven't seen the movie, you've been warned. Let's justify my student debt and start with what I'm most qualified to comment on, the animation. Whenever I think that Disney and Pixar animation can't outdo themselves, they always surprise me. We've always known Pixar is the shining star of 3D animation, and since they're owned by Disney, of course Disney's 3D animation would follow suit. But I mean, Tangled came out the same year as Toy Story 3. I love both movies, but I would honestly say that Toy Story 3's animation is just a little bit better. And only 2 years later, when Frozen came out and took the world by storm,
or should I say Blizzard,
is when we noticed the dreaded same face syndrome of the main female characters. They had come such a long way from Chicken Little, then boom! Fuck creativity! Main characters need to look the same now! Which, believe it or not, I am not blaming on the character designers. I mean, just look at Raya and the Last Dragon, concept art versus the final render of Sisu. The artists have good ideas, but the suits are like, gotta make that merchandise as easy to make as possible, can't have that fancy creative shit. No, that would take way too much money to manufacture. Corporatize it immediately! Then 5 animated films later, Moana came out. And I'm like, this is it! This is the peak of Disney animation. But as I said before, they always somehow push the envelope. Moana was just the tip of the iceberg for more varied character designs. Look at our main character in Encanto, Mirabel Madrigal. Gone are the days of the exact same slender face, gigantic eyes, thin brows and lips, and that damn little pixie nose. Mirabel's got beautifully thick lips and eyebrows, both perfect for being super expressive. Her face is wider and rounder, which makes for big smiles where you just want to squish her cheeks and give her a big hug. And she's got a wide and slightly hooked nose, which you can see plainly is passed down from her dad and Abuelo Pedro. Every character has a distinct face, no two looking the same, though you can still see the similarities through the family tree. And more than just noses, we've got hair types, mixed skin tones, face shapes. And for anyone that doesn't know, Colombia's ethnic and racial diversity is really as varied as you see here. There's a lot of history that goes into why, but I'm not gonna go into it. I just want to point out how vibrant the colors in this movie are. Not just in the plants or the environments, but also in the skin and hair colors of the characters. And I just want to say before we move on, how does Peppa have red hair? Diversity of color, there is even more body diversity, and you all know the shining star here, Luisa. Reportedly, Disney executives didn't want her to have a super buff body. Hey, it's just magic. She doesn't need to have muscles to carry stuff. It's just magic. But absolute mad lad Dylan Ekron, the character model supervisor, and their whole team managed to convince the mouse to give us buff Luisa. And now there is literally a shortage of Luisa merchandise, with fans flocking to Twitter to complain about it. Give us buff ladies! Now, beyond the character designs, the animation is truly a marvel. While really breaking the mold on this video, saying the stuff people are too afraid to say, yada yada, you know it looks good. I mean, no disrespect to you having eyes. But please, just take a moment to appreciate the small things. The half blinks and subtle expressions. How each person in this mural gets brighter when it's their part of the song. The peach fuzz on the nape of Luisa's neck. This yarn texture. How goddamn good these arepas look. Oh my god, me and Camilo are on the same page here. I want to eat them all. And the dancing. I've seen a lot of people in awe that they used real actors dancing to reference, and yeah, that's awesome. But that's not new. Video reference material and choreographing something in real life to help an animated sequence has been around since the beginning of animated film. Just look at this footage for the Gospels from Hercules back in 1997. So no, I am not impressed by the fact that they used real people dancing to animate. But what I am impressed by is the dancers themselves and how well the animators referenced them. I saw a YouTube comment where somebody said that they don't dance like animated characters, they dance like real people. And you do feel that. The flowing skirts, the intricate steps, you just want to get up and dance with them. The animation and visuals are just so goddamn beautiful, I literally only have one critique. They obviously just reused Augustine's bee sting model from the first act in the third. I mean, what are the chances that he would be stung and well up in the exact same way? But really, that's just a nitpick. This movie is a treat for the eyes in every frame. Enough said. Encanto is a deceptively simple story. It isn't a grand story where the whole world, or even just the whole town, is at stake. I mean, sure, the Madrigal's gifts have helped the community prosper, but the ending demonstrates they can still function without the family's magic. Encanto is a story about one family, and most of the movie takes place inside one house, yet it feels grand. Obviously, because it's a magic house, we're able to have some fantastical locations. But what I find more compelling is the family dynamic, and exploring complex topics like generational trauma and the concept of the gifted child. I'll leave someone who's experienced generational trauma to explain that. I do not feel qualified, but I can understand the gifted child, both in being one and not. The child that is deemed gifted will be praised, doted on, given opportunities, but inherit expectations, sometimes impossible standards, and of course, pressure. While the non-gifted child will be overlooked and underappreciated, told to step aside, always in the shadow of their gifted peers. I mean, their magic powers are called gifts, for God's sake. I think most people have experienced one or both of these in some way, being gifted in one thing but not in another. I really can't think of any other Disney movie that has explored this as a focal point. They have, of course, done the odd one out storyline before, as that's basically a Disney staple, but I like what they did with Mirabel as it's wrapped up in so much mystery and has such dire consequences. Usually the odd one out in a Disney movie is ostracized and feared. Elsa's ice powers, Vanellope's glitch, Quasimodo's face, Lilo's, well, just Lilo. But that's kind of where it ends, usually. And whatever perceived flaw they have just ends up being accepted by the end. Lessons are learned happily ever after. It's not so clear-cut in Encanto. Mirabel has already accepted that she has no gift, which is confirmed by the art book. Her parents don't love her any less. And aside from Abuela, we don't see any evidence of her being treated badly because she has no gift. Other than this jackass over here who can't read the fucking room. But you can still see how it negatively affects Mirabel. You see her internal struggle through song and expressions. You can see how it makes Abuela treat her differently than the rest of the family. And it makes the ending ripe for theorizing. On my first watch, I had no idea if Mirabel was going to somehow get a gift at the end, or have it be discovered that she had a gift all along, or something like that, and I was so disappointed. However, after subsequent watches, I have my own thoughts on Mirabel's gift status. So you know Mirabel is supposedly the only Madrigal child with no gift, but what else is there to know? Well, because of this, she prospered in creative hobbies like sewing and craft work. And she even embroidered her entire outfit and satchel. Every Madrigal family member's clothing is representative of their gift. Luisa has weights on the trim of her skirt, Isa is covered in flowers, Papa has sun earrings, you get it. Mirabel chose butterflies. Butterflies are everywhere in this movie. In visions, in architecture, there's a butterfly on the candle, there's just a swarm of them at one point. It's a very clear motif and a commonly understood analogy for metamorphosis. From the first few frames that we see her, we are told visually that she will create a great change in her family. Though no one expects it from her. She has some of the traits that I usually dislike in characters, you know, how she's a clumsy tryhard, but for her it really works.
Just want to do my part like the rest of the family.
She basically has to try twice as hard on everything just to be noticed, and even then it seems to go poorly. Mirabel is so overlooked that while swept up in the joy of a quote perfect moment, the entire family just forgets to put her in a family photo. And it could be assumed that this may not be the first time it's happened. Check out this photo. Definitely looks like Mirabel was trying to stay on the sidelines here till her sister Luisa pulled her over. But in this moment, not even Luisa thought to get her. In this one moment, Mirabel is not part of the family, and she finally has to admit to herself that she's not fine. This breaks out into the musical's I Want song, Waiting for a Miracle. It's a powerful song with astounding visuals and some of the best colors in the whole film. Mirabel fantasizes about what she could do if she had a gift, how she could show the family something new. She has been waiting her whole life for a miracle and thinks she might be too late. However, earlier I alluded to the idea that perhaps Mirabel does have a gift, and I think Bruno said it best.
You're the real gift, kid.
Yes, you can argue that line in context with the rest of the song, I love you, is that magic doesn't matter, the real gift is family, blah 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 blah, but I'm choosing to take it literally. It's been argued that Mirabel was actually imbued with the essence of the miracle itself. How else would her opening the front door of the new house suddenly bring the miracle back? Oh, because the family is all together and happy again or whatever? Healing generational trauma is a long process, not just one single moment. Doors are the way that the miracle grants gifts. That's how every single madrigal got their magical powers. This even makes Mirabel's first door disappear make just a little more sense. From Abuela's monologue at the end, it seems to imply that Mirabel didn't get a gift because of Abuela forgetting what the miracle was for. But if Casita is a manifestation of the miracle, and if Mirabel was given the gift of the miracle itself, wouldn't the entire Casita be her big, amazing room? This also ties to the cracks in the casita. When the miracle begins to fade, the candle begins to flicker, everyone's gifts are out of whack, and the house begins to crack and fall apart. It appears that the miracle fades when there is strain on the family, but I'd argue it's more to do with when Mirabel's relationship with the family feels strained. The candle flickers when Mirabel's door disappears, and it makes her feel unworthy. The casita starts spider-webbing with cracks after waiting for a miracle when Mirabel feels most detached from her family. Why would it do that if the miracle was reacting to the entire family? Everyone else is having a wonderful time. And Casita starts healing when Mirabel is having a positive connection with her sister, despite how in that same moment, Abuela is gearing up to absolutely destroy her with words. It only seems to happen when Mirabel is upset, or is about to discover a damning prophecy. Oh, but why was Antonio's ceremony the first time anyone ever saw this? Well, maybe they just didn't notice before. After all, Abuela says the crack started with Mirabel, but I think it's maybe just because, the filmmakers needed a catalyst for the plot. All I know is the house breaks when Mirabel feels detached from the family, it fixes itself when she feels connected, and when the candle goes out, the miracle is gone, but Mirabel touching the door to Casita 2.0 brought it back.
Or maybe I'm wrong.
But that's what I like about this movie. There isn't a single spelled out answer. It's a story we can sink our teeth into and pick apart piece by piece to uncover more and more details. A good movie can come and go, in one ear, out the other. But a great movie makes you think. But I think that's enough about Mirabel. After all, she's only a part of the amazing madrigals. From what I've seen, movies that have a ton of characters to follow suffer from spreading the story too thin. Anyone remember my Sing vs. Trolls review from 2017? No? Yeah, I don't blame you. But both of those movies had tons of characters. In Trolls, each of the secondary characters were boiled down to a trope and only existed to sell toys and make future spin-offs. None of them were explored as characters. In Sing, they did some character exploration, but it was so contrived and sparse throughout that I was unable to form a connection with any of them, even on subsequent watches, since I had to watch them multiple times to make the double review. In Encanto, there are 12 living Madrigal family members that the movie has to juggle around. And in my opinion, the amount of information and exploration of the characters was spread just right. Personally, there are some characters I would have liked to see more of, some character development felt a little rushed in some parts, but it's spread like a nice healthy coating of butter on toast. I'm not gonna want to eat it because some parts have a little bit more butter than others and some parts might have next to no butter at all. No, it's not perfect, but I don't need it to be perfect to enjoy a good piece of toast. And things not needing to be perfect is kind of a theme in this movie anyway. But we'll get to themes later, back to the characters. Obviously, Mirabel is the protagonist, and her family are the secondary and tertiary characters. I would call Pepa's side of the family the tertiary characters and Julieta's side the secondary. Being Mirabel's immediate family, it makes sense that her sisters would get their own songs. Not much is explored about the cousins, but if they had tried to give a song to every single character, the story would have been spread way too thin. For pacing purposes, I actually want to talk about the characters with less screen time first, starting with the parents. Finally! Good Disney parents! It was a theme for a few decades that main characters either had both parents dead, one parent dead or just out of the picture, or both parents intact but barely a part of the story at all. And as much as Mirabel's dad, Augustine, seems to brush with death, her parents are indeed intact and a part of the story. I mean, they're not a huge part, but they're active enough to leave an impact. Julieta and Augustine are the only ones to stand up for Mirabel. They obviously love their daughter fully, unconditionally. On the day of Antonio's gift ceremony, one they know will be especially hard for Mirabel, her father levels with her on how he understands being surrounded by the exceptional can make one feel
Unceptional.
Okay, puppy.
I'm just saying I get it.
I mean, it's a little undermined by his bee-sting riddled body, but the thought is still there. As for Julieta, you can see just how much she adores her daughter. She repeatedly tells her she's just as special as the rest of the family, and that she has nothing to prove. Mirabel obviously just takes it as, well, she's my mom, of course she has to say that, but she eventually proves her mother right. The next couple is Felix and Pepa. I honestly don't have much to say about them other than I love it whenever they're on screen together. Pepa is just such a hot mess throughout basically the whole film, but whenever Felix is around, you see how good he is at calming her down. They are truly perfect together. Now onto the cousins, starting with the youngest, Antonio. He is just so precious, I can't handle it! Our first scene with him takes place under a bed as he hides from his family. You'd expect a 5-year-old to be absolutely stoked to get magic powers, but Mirabel's ceremony was the last one, so naturally...
What if it doesn't work?
This scene is just so sweet. It really showcases Mirabel's kind heart and her love for her family, even in the face of her own inner turmoil. We know that this has to hurt her so much that she didn't get a gift, but all she cares about is knowing that Antonio will be happy with his. And it makes perfect sense that these two would be so attached to each other since they've been roommates. Before the Madrigal is granted their gift and gains access to a magical room, they live in the nursery, and, well, we know how that turned out. That does make me wonder about the relationship between Mirabel and Camilo, though. They're the same age, so for the first 5 years they both shared the nursery together, but I guess as soon as he got his gift, things must have changed. I mean, it's not hard to understand, honestly. But anyway, Camilo. He's the lovable goofball of the family, and I've seen the fandom calling him a theater kid. I can absolutely see it. Just look at his photo, barely out of the womb, and he's already a star. But outside of his class clown antics, he's also really compassionate.
It's okay, Mommy. Deep breath in, deep breath out.
Also, he's got possibly the best part of possibly the best song in the movie, so, there's that too. Finally, before we move on to the secondary characters, the eldest of Pepa's children, Dolores. I fell for her the moment I heard her signature squeak. I have to say, I do not envy her gift. The ability to hear anything and everything for at least a full mile radius. Let's hope the adults waited till she was asleep to conceive the rest of the children. Dolores is considered the family gossip.
She's gonna tell everyone.
But that was about a prophecy seemingly boding the doom of the family and their miracle. She has proven herself to be able to keep a secret, given she kept her Uncle Bruno a secret for a literal decade. Okay, it's time to talk about Bruno.
We don't talk about Bruno!
Shut up! 7-foot frame? No. Rats on his back? Close. It's the weirdo uncle every family seems to have, but outward appearances can be deceiving. The true Bruno is selfless, imaginative, and highly superstitious, which makes perfect sense if he's been known for constantly seeing bad visions. Like Mirabel, he's not appreciated, but this time it's for his gift. People who are given bad news can project their hurt onto the messenger, especially if they have literally nothing else to direct their blame onto. But they really should be appreciative of him. I mean, first of all, every time you ask him for a prophecy, he has to climb how many stairs? Do you know how many goddamn stairs he had to climb just because you wanted a prophecy about your goldfish? Anyway, this eccentric telenovela enthusiast is one of the best characters in the movie. He's the perfect amount of heart and comic relief. Every time the music swells and things start getting a little heavy, he always breaks the tension. And speaking of tension, she's buff, she's tough, and she's had enough. It's the sister that can crush anything, including the merch game, Luisa. Stoic and reliable, she's the middle child who handles everything. She doesn't get a whole lot of screen time, but has more than enough to make anyone fall in love with her, especially with her solo Surface Pressure. Visually, it's astounding, and the first musical number in the movie to take us to fantastical places outside the realm of sparkly imagination. Throughout every metaphorical scenario therein, Luisa is constantly saving Mirabel. While she's a hulking goddess of strength, she can also be so gentle at the same time. All Luisa longs for is a bit of time to relax and not worry about all of her crushing responsibilities. She likes to help and definitely has the power to do so, but everyone needs a break once in a while. In the final song, to being told that she's strong, Luisa says,
Yeah, but sometimes I cry.
This acknowledges that Luisa perceives her strength as not just physical, but mental too. She believes that if she cries, that somehow makes her less strong. But her sisters respond,
So do I.
It's a beautiful moment that shows that having emotions does not make you lesser, and that everyone, no matter how strong, has their limits. Does anybody else think that this is awesome for Disney to be teaching our children? I feel like Surface Pressure can be relatable to almost anyone, because I relate to it, and I'm the exact opposite of Luisa. This line specifically hits me hard.
I'm pretty sure I'm worthless if I can be of service.
In my situation, I'm not super strong and carrying everyone's load. I'm actually chronically ill and bedridden most days. Ever wondered why I haven't run a fest event since 2021 and can't even schedule my live streams correctly? That's why. I just feel like a burden. So when I do have the energy, I'll go do all the chores that I can think of just to feel like I'm worth something. And then I usually push past my own limits and physically can't go on. I'm constantly stressing about all the things I need to do because I don't want to have to put that weight on someone else. For Luisa, she feels the weight of the entire town on her shoulders. Luisa's day had literally just started. She had just finished eating breakfast when she is promptly asked to relocate a church, reroute the river, find a farmer's lost donkeys, and fix someone's leaning house, all within less than 1 minute. No matter what she feels, she just says,
Will do.
Lisa, the donkeys got out again.
On it.
without complaint. I'm surprised it took her 14 years to finally crack. And even though she did and is a bit of a mess through the second act, she's still a joy to watch. I'm glad that all the comedic overblown crying that she does is after her solo, because when I think about it, a big buff girl who can move mountains, waving her arms and sobbing that she's a loser for not lifting a piano, feels a little mean in hindsight. But while I'm watching it, it doesn't feel like she's the butt of the joke, even if she is. While we're laughing at this absurd visual, it's not completely at Luisa's expense, since we're keen to why she's this inconsolable. We're able to sympathize with her and understand that, well, we'd probably be that same sobbing mess in that position too. Hell, I know I have been. But Luisa is not the only one under intense pressure. One of my biggest criticisms of the film is I think Isabella felt a little skipped over. Her big fight with Mirabel leading up to her song What Else Can I Do was a grand total of 30 seconds. They go from screaming at each other to soaring along Issa's vines like they've completely just solved 15 years of grievances. I wish more could have been done with that scene where they were just talking. Perhaps there are cut scenes where they do and they just didn't have the time to squeeze them in. Although this movie is several minutes shorter than most contemporary Disney films. Come on, they could have given Isabella just a couple more minutes. But I digress. Isn't that just kind of what musicals do? Problems can be solved through a song, duets can replace dialogue, and there is a lot to be learned through this duet and more subtle things throughout the film. When I first saw this movie, I honestly thought Isabella was going to be pissed that Mirabel's involvement made her so frenzied she grew a cactus. But I was pleasantly surprised that it was actually the exact opposite. Getting to finally confess what's been bottled up inside was enough for her to let go, and secretly, that's what she's always wanted.
It didn't need to be perfect, it just needed to be.
If it just needed to be. She has longed to just be, without expectations to live up to. Ever since she was just 5 years old, she's been put into a box made by other people, to the point she hadn't even explored her gift for 16 years. It was all roses and Flor de Mayo for over a decade before she realized that basically anything within the Flora kingdom was within her grasp. She says,
I'm so sick of pretty, I want something true.
meaning that this vapid version of herself has never been true. And it's not like she's rejecting femininity, she is rejecting this confined idea of self-expression that she's been forced into. Mirabel just sees her as effortlessly perfect, but it looks so effortless because Isabella literally practices. Not just how to grow flowers, how to dance, how to enter a room like an acrobat, how to sit, hell, probably even how to walk, which she pulls off at all times. Isabella says all Mirabel has ever done for her is mess things up. And I'm sure Mirabel never did anything to her on purpose, but let's face it, Mirabel is a little impulsive and clumsy. Isabella cannot see beyond her own pressure to be a literal idealistic angel to have any sympathy for her little sister. Anything Mirabel does that in any way impedes this quest for perfection is obviously just going to be an annoyance. And this is probably mixed with years of resentment for the lack of standards given to Mirabel in comparison to her and Luisa. Abuela literally tells Mirabel just to step aside when all she was doing was decorations. And after she made this beautifully embroidered candle holder for you, I can't believe you just ignored that she made that by hand. How could you just...
Clear skies, clear skies.
Okay, we'll talk about Abuela in a second. Back to Isabella. This bitterness towards the youngest sibling is something I'm sure many elder children can understand. Hell, with the amount of TikToks I've seen about younger siblings getting miles of leeway, I'm certain of this. Though usually that's attributed to parents being exhausted after having a few children and easing up on restrictions. But I don't see either of her parents imposing this on her. She says she was marrying for the family. But let's be real. It was just for Abuela. The ideal that Isabella lives up to is entirely for Abuela. She is always the one seen meeting with the Guzmans or talking about them. Abuela is the one who is constantly saying how good this marriage will be for the Encanto, but no one else says a thing. I don't think anyone else even cares if she marries this himbo or not. The only thing they ever say about the marriage is how they've got to be busy bees and make everything, well...
Perfect.
Abuela seems obsessed with perfection and this abstract concept of family above her own family. I mean, just take a look at Peppa. I'm with Peppa here. What do you want from her, Alma? Instead of saying, oh, you have a cloud, what's wrong? It's just, oh, you have a cloud? Stop it. Peppa's gift is not really in her control. It's just a reflection of her mood. I can see how Peppa grew up to be so high-strung if her feeling anything negative was met with a reprimand. Every time her own children tried to bring up thinking about an individual family member, namely for this movie Mirabel, Abuela diverts the attention to the whole family, the casita, the community, the miracle itself.
No, tonight will be hard for her. If the gift ceremony doesn't go well this time, tonight will be hard for us all. Think of the family.
I was thinking of my daughter.
Mama, you've always been too hard on Mirabel.
Look around. We must protect our family, our Encanto.
She essentially brainwashed Isabella into thinking that a marriage she didn't want was more than just for Abuela's satisfaction.
Such a perfect match.
So perfect.
So good for the Encanto.
Isabella is very obviously Abuela's favorite. In the first 2 acts, in almost every scene she's in, this is clear. During the opening number, Isabella is the only one to get a kiss from Abuela. When Abuela incredulously asks Mirabel what she was doing, "Bitch, you were literally just in the song! What do you think?" She's holding a vase of flowers grown by Isabella. When Mirabel is in Bruno's tower, Abuela can be seen sweeping up flower petals. When just absolutely verbally eviscerating Mirabel, Abuela says Isabella is out of control. Whose control? Hers. Even when Isabella so much as unconsciously grows flowers on her head, Abuela picks off the only one that doesn't match, enforcing even in the smallest of ways that this grandchild is the one that she cares most about grooming into the embodiment of obedience and opulence. But why? For this part, I want to give a shout out to Isaac Carlson and his video about this exact subject, links in the description. One of the points Isaac makes is that Isabella is the spitting image of young Alma. Just lighten her skin a bit and boom, they look like mother and daughter more than any of Abuela's own children. But I'm going to assume that this was more for visual storytelling than anything else. I think the real biggest reason is because Isabella was the first grandchild. She is indeed the eldest of 6 at age 21. I feel that after raising triplets, Abuela unconsciously saw her first grandchild as a way to vicariously live how she wanted to. She confesses to Mirabel that before she lost her home,
I thought I would be a different woman.
By the way she says this, it sounds like she didn't become the woman she thought she'd be, probably due to the tragedy that befell her. Even with a miracle, it can't cure the trauma of losing everything but her children and having to raise them alone. This movie makes it both very easy to hate and blame Abuela for everything awful that happens, but also easy to sympathize with her. This movie did it right. There is no villain. Just a traumatized woman coming to terms with how, in her pursuit to keep her family from the suffering she endured, she imposed a new kind of suffering. It's a realistic story that can be easily empathized with. Even though none of us have been blessed with a magic candle, many of us have either had a family member or have been that family member that parallels Abuela. Speaking of realistic, can we appreciate how hard they went on her expression here? That is real pain right there. This is how you would cry if you just saw your husband getting sliced in half, dear God! And something I find interesting is how it's such a contrast to how we see her represented in the opening. In the beginning, it was a story for a child, without the details that make it so painful. Finally, now that Abuela has lost her home for a second time, she tells Mirabel the full story. And it's not until this that Mirabel can understand Abuela's actions and fully forgive her, fulfilling the prophecy. It's just so beautiful, and the butterflies and the music, it's so good. Okay, I cannot wait any longer. It's time for the final section. We don't talk about Bruno as being letting go of the chores, hell yeah! Let It Go was so incessantly popular, it has now been directly referenced in at least 3 Disney movies, including this one. And finally, this absolute banger dethrones Disney's musical titan, yeah! Not to say Let It Go is a bad song, it's objectively not. It's a catchy song with a Tony Award-winning singer, but come on. We're comparing a solo to an 8-person montuno ensemble with overlapping syncopated melodies. And beyond just how it sounds, the lyrics and the character moments tell a cohesive story. There's foreshadowing around every corner, and even gives backstory and key plot elements, all while being under 4 minutes long. Considering I already went over the character songs in their respective sections, I think it's time for a close reading of We Don't Talk About Bruno. So we start with Peppa, trying to shut up Felix and not let him tell Mirabel about Bruno. At first, I really wondered why she seemed so angry, but I have to assume there's a lot of complicated feelings over her brother seemingly running away. She insists you shouldn't even speak his name, but can't help herself from regaling the tale of her wedding day and how Bruno impacted it. The lyrics say, Bruno walks in with a mischievous grin. He told me that it looks like rain, and doing so, he floods my brain. Now, first of all, I'm willing to wager he didn't have a mischievous grin at all, and he was just, trying to smile at his sister. From Bruno's rap section in the final song, All of You, he says,
That wasn't a prophecy, I could just see you were sweating.
So essentially, all he was trying to do was point out that she seemed nervous, and Peppa, who is naturally an anxious mess, let it get to her head till she spiraled. In the end, it's not really Bruno's fault. The song then transitions to Dolores, and I love how the sound design changes to this more chill, Pink Panther-esque vibe. You can hear every step they make to reflect Dolores' gifted hearing, and she sings in a hushed tone as this may be the first time she's ever revealed this secret, that Bruno's been in the house this whole time. You can actually see him in the background of this segment 3 times, even bopping to the beat. Also, this little move, perfection. Then from the quiet and subtle to the eerie and theatric, Camilo takes over the next part. Everyone knows this part. I love the growl and crackle in his voice. He plays the spooky storyteller perfectly. Out of everyone's verses, Camilo's is the most fabricated. I mean, being 15 years old, he would only have memories of Bruno before the age of 6. No wonder Camilo thinks he's 7 feet tall. All of his memories of his uncle are probably from below Bruno's knee. But while mostly untrue, I think that this is my favorite section for just how delightfully dark it is. The ensemble then moves outside, and we get an idea of how the rest of the village felt about him. Dead pets, weight gain, hair loss. Bruno had to deliver a lot of bad news and gained a reputation for all the wrong reasons. But we know that Bruno didn't just see misfortune from the very next section. In comes Isabella, descending on a swing of vines, saying her prophecy was that one day she would live the life of her dreams and her powers would grow.
Like the grapes that thrive on the vine.
Aside from proving that Bruno's numerous unfortunate visions were just bad luck, it also works as a funny subversion. Like, oh, of course, the perfect child gets the good vision. Though, if you think about it, Isa possibly saw this as a bad omen too, since perfection isn't what she wanted. Dolores then comes back for a moment to insinuate she's in love with Mariano, the big dumb himbo trying to marry Isabella. I was a little surprised by this, like, they're really gonna shove in this conflict too? But it's handled about as quickly as it was brought up, so I don't think it detracts from the rest of the story. Then right in the middle of a song all about shit-talking Bruno, Isabella just takes a moment to tell her sister to shut up. It doesn't even rhyme. And here we are, setting the table, where everyone's verses overlap and we all go, damn, didn't know they'd go that hard. I mean, what can I say? This song got over 100 million views on YouTube in just 1 month for a reason. Something I'd like to point out though is at the end, Isabella can be heard saying I'm fine over and over again with a pained expression. And when I bought the MP3, I noticed that Dolores actually sings that with her, but panned to the right. But you can't really hear it in the film, only in the MP3. Interesting. And before we move on from We Don't Talk About Bruno, I just wanted to point out the filmmakers are quoted as saying, what helped make this piece unique is that we had a group of Latinx dancers from Colombia, from Cuba, from Puerto Rico, people who understood the assignment.
I understood the assignment.
So I don't really have much to say about the first or last songs. They're catchy, they do their job, enough said. But there's no better way to end off this video than taking a moment to appreciate this movie's Remember Me. Now, I don't want to say that Dos Oruguitas is a Remember Me ripoff. It's not. They both stand on their own. But they are similar from the soft singing, simple instrumentation, and melancholic tone. And just like Remember Me, I feel like bursting into tears whenever I hear it. This number also further exemplifies the butterfly metaphor of the movie. I mean, oruguitas means caterpillar. The song is about, well, dos oruguitas, two caterpillars that are in love, but must separate so that they can fly. Abuela had to separate herself from the miracle to remember what was really important, to accept the help to rebuild their home, and to go into the future. In the end, Encanto is one of those special movies that just gets better every time you watch it. Always something new to notice, foreshadowing that went over your head, or little moments with characters in the background. If you liked this, definitely check out other people's takes on it, like Isaac Carlson and Jessica Flores. I am just one perspective, and I've honestly just scraped the tip of the iceberg in terms of discussion to be had around this film. And I know that I just spoiled basically the entire thing, but if you haven't seen the movie itself, please, I implore you to give it a watch and get lost in the enchantment. Till next time.